Hello.
Okay. We want to welcome you guys to Ocala Arts and Entertainment. We are downtown in front of the Corkscrew. We want to say thanks to Tim for blessing us with, just giving us this space to do our thing. I have a really wonderful lady next to me who is an educator and a spoken word artist in Ocala. Amira Sims, welcome.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Of course. So I want to jump in from the educator side of it.
Okay.
Walk us through before, I guess. Let's start with, where are you from?
I'm from New Jersey.
So you're originally from New Jersey?
Yeah, I'm from New Jersey, but I haven't lived in New Jersey for quite some time. I spent the last few years of my high school in Atlanta. Then I moved to Cocoa Beach, Florida. Then I moved to Valdosta, Georgia. Then I was in Northern California for 10 years. And then I moved back to Atlanta. And then I moved here to Ocala. It's been 6 or 7 years. 6 years?
Okay, so we've been doing some moving.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you settled here in Ocala, and what started in terms of your career?
Well, I had been teaching. I've always wanted to be a professor or a teacher since I was a little kid. My nickname was School, so I've always wanted to be a teacher. And I played school when I was a kid. Like, I wanted to be a teacher. But once I was in undergrad, I started substitute teaching in middle school and high school, and I saw immediately that I did not want to work with high schoolers or middle schoolers or kids in general. I like volunteering and doing like educational lessons for kids, but I didn't want to do that for my career.
Right.
For several reasons. In K through 12, you don't have as much autonomy as an educator. You go with the curriculum they give you, and it's just a little bit more structured.
Right.
So in undergrad, I figured that out, and I, connected with a few professors at Valdosta State University, and by the time I got into graduate school, I got a teaching assistantship, and then I started teaching while I was still a graduate student at the end of my, I don't want to say, my career, at the end of my educational career.
Right.
Didn't stop there, but, my professors knew I wanted to be a professor, and I had good grades, and I had won that teaching assistantship and done that for a semester. So they let me guest lecture, and I got experience. And then before I even graduated, or like a month before I graduated, I got a position at Moultrie Technical College in Moultrie, Georgia.
Oh.
And I started teaching. And then at the time, my ex-husband had orders. We got stationed in California, and so then I moved to California, but I got a job within 3 months of moving there. And initially I was an adjunct. Adjunct is a part-time professor.
Right.
But what a lot of people don't know is that there's more adjunct professors than full-time professors at most institutions in community colleges and state colleges.
Really?
Yes.
Why is that? Why do you think that is?
Okay. Well, this is a trend that it's about I want to say 50 or 60 year trend that's occurred. I actually did a lot of research on this. This was going to be the topic of my dissertation, the adjunctification of higher education.
Right.
But it's there's a lot of benefits to using adjuncts as opposed to using full-time professors, but there's also drawbacks. The benefits are the institution can fill the gaps for high enrollment.
Right.
So if you have a need for a course, and it's to hire a full-time professor, you have to assemble a committee.
Okay.
So we're talking 5 to 10 professors. You have to have a chair. You have to get questions approved. It's a big process.
Chain of
it's
events.
A big, and then it's a long process.
Yeah.
But if you need a class taught, there's qualified people who have a master's degree or a PhD and who are qualified to teach, but they are not. Maybe they're working full time, like in nursing in particular.
Right.
You'll be a full-time nurse, but maybe you wouldn't mind sharing your knowledge.
Yes.
And this would be a benefit for the students because you're firsthand experience as being a nurse, and then at the same time you're teaching.
Right.
So this would be really good, and for the institution it would save them time. It would save
Yes.
them money. It would
Yes.
be really good. So there are some benefits to hiring adjuncts.
Right.
The drawbacks are that across the nation, and actually it's an international phenomenon, there has been a shift to almost making education, instead of for the public good, comparing it almost to a consumer mentality, like the customer.
Right.
So it's almost like we need to save money. We need to get money. Before, you had all these donors giving to institutions. Now it's difficult to get people to donate large sums of money. I mean, people do donate, but not like they did before. And then,
Right.
it also involves government, how much money you get from the government, and institutions need money
Yes.
to function.
Yes.
So if they can save money by having adjuncts as opposed to full-time faculty,
That would help the institute.
yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not always the case that that's the driving reason,
Yeah.
but sometimes that's the case. Sometimes, a professor will go on maternity leave or have a major accident or pass away. Things happen.
Yeah.
And they need to immediately hire someone who's qualified. And there are plenty of professors who don't want to be full-time professors.
Right.
So they just prefer to teach 2 classes or 3 classes. So it could be a win-win in some situations.
So you got accepted, and what did you start teaching?
Oh, psychology.
Psychology.
Yeah, all of my background, my bachelor's and my master's was in psychology. And then technically I'm currently a student pursuing a PhD in psychology. And previously I did clinical psychology, so I was trained to be a counselor. And I did a
Right.
little bit of counseling. I was on licensure track, but when I moved, I knew I wanted to teach, so
Yeah.
I didn't go down that route in California, because I would have had to take a couple of more classes because the standards were different in California than Georgia. And teaching, once I got to teach a couple of classes, then that's a whole nother set of skills you learn. So,
Yes.
I kind of got mentored under some professors in California, and then, kind of built up my repertoire of classes and expanded how many classes I can teach. And then, eventually I decided to come here.
So you moved here, and what happened with the teaching side of it? Did you?
Oh, I
maintain-
moved here specifically because of my job. I got hired
okay.
for a
So you got-
full-time tenure position, and I was working in Georgia, and I was doing pretty good, but it wasn't a tenure track position.
Oh,
and a
okay.
tenure track position means you are kind of being married to the institution,
Right.
and so you have a lot of more benefits.
So this
So-
institution that hired you for 10 years is, which institution is this?
Oh, here?
Yeah.
I've been at the College of Central Florida
College of
from
Central
2016
Florida.
till
Okay.
now.
All
So
right.
they hired me full-time and for a tenure track position, and so that's what made me come to Ocala.
Ocala.
Because before that, I worked at Georgia Military College, and I also worked at a dental college in Georgia, and I had classes. I didn't technically need this job,
Right.
but those were adjunct positions, and adjunct positions are by nature you're disposable.
Right.
Nobody wants to say that, but pretty much you're at the whim of the fluctuations of enrollment
Oh, I
and
see.
of the needs of the institution. So, I did have a steady schedule, and I was needed, and there was a position coming available because someone was retiring, but I didn't want to wait.
Right.
When I saw this position, I thought,
That's it. Jump in.
yeah. And I had never heard of Ocala, so I like change,
Yeah.
and I was excited about seeing what Ocala was about. And when I came for the interview, I got a good vibe, so I was
Yes.
like, hey, I'll try it out.
Yeah.
Seems like a nice, quiet place, and it's a change of pace of what I had in Atlanta. And I decided to make it my home.
Yeah. So the educational side of you is rocking. You are in Ocala. You're at
CF.
CF, and what's happening with the poetry side, the spoken word side? How is that turning while you do all of this educational stuff?
That's that was kind of tricky because
Yeah, we got some more Trucking. Yeah, it's a busy space. Busy space.
Yes.
Yeah.
We need this
Yeah.
food.
Wow.
Well, when I was in Atlanta, there were, it's a different scene. So there were so many different opportunities for me to do my poetry.
Right.
And it's a different vibe. So a lot of the places I performed, like I performed at Apache, I featured at Apache. Now Apache has changed since then. They're Apache XLR, but before Apache was like a premier spot in Atlanta. It's still a premier spot, but when you go, we're talking, there's a fee to get in, there's a long line to get in, people are dressed up, you come with your best. It's almost like Apollo. If you go up there and you're not on
Ready.
point,
Yeah.
you are going to get
pulled off.
yes.
Yeah.
I mean, they might let you go.
Umbrella style.
Yes. So, depending on when you go, you really need to have yourself together.
Yeah.
So, and then there's other places. I was just in Atlanta last week, and I performed at Urban Grind, which is a coffee shop. It's a black-owned business, and my brother actually was hired to cater a private party for the owner, and they have this, just real community vibe, a lot of artwork that local artists paint and then have the artwork displayed on the wall so people can purchase them.
Wow. Right there.
They change it out. Often there's nights where they will have games, like board games, where you come and just, it's downtown or Marietta Street. So anyway, I first went to Urban Grind, and that's a little more low key. You still need to bring your game, but it's an open mic, and it's more a variety of performers. So some people who are featuring, at other places, and other people that are more kind of just practicing. So and the crowd is very forgiving and welcoming, and it's a good place to go and just practice.
Yeah.
So I went there first, and I performed there first.
I know you said at a very young age, teaching is something you wanted to do.
Yes.
How did the poem side, the poetry side come in?
Because, for teaching, my view of teaching is really, when I say teaching, I really want to be an educator. So to be an educator, you have to draw out people's natural curiosity as well as share something that you learned. So I liked reading. I liked writing. I kept a diary since I was a very little kid. So I've always been reading and writing. And so when I was a teenager, actually in Jersey, right before I came to Atlanta, and when I first got to Atlanta, I was a rapper.
Oh.
Yeah, so
okay.
I actually was a rapper, and I was heavy into hip-hop then. KRS-One, Big Daddy Kane.
MC Light.
Yeah, MC Light, Queen Latifah. So I was already into that world. And I didn't really think about poetry. Really, I didn't think about poetry.
Right.
I did this rapping because that was my thing. I rapped, and then my brother used to do, breakdancing and beatboxing. So I was kind of semi-tomboyish, I have like two sides. I have a tomboyish side and then a girly side. So I would be hanging with my brother and getting into that world. So I think that's probably where the writing really started turning into poetry.
Right.
But I didn't know I was still like a rapper. And then I think the first time I really remember being considered a poet, I talk about this in my TED Talk. I was in a class in Dr. Shamir's class, in history class, and I wrote this poem titled Pride and Humility in the History of the African American. And it wasn't that I was trying to write a poem. I was just asking myself, can we embrace the dual nature of being African and American? Can you have that in one body? Right. I was inspired by W.E.B. Du Bois' Veil. Mm-hmm. So I was just writing, and that's how most of my poems are. I just write whatever comes to my mind, just kind of freehand, and I just wrote this long essay/poem, and I had it in my journal because in this history class we kept journals on a regular basis. This was required.
Right.
And Dr. Shamir's his class was like he put us in triads, so groups of 3, and you stayed with your triad through the entire semester, and it was a very unconventional class. So I just did my mental calculations, and I thought, there's no way he can read my journal because there's 55 of us in this class alone, and he has 4 to 5 classes as a professor. They're
Right.
required to have 3 to 5 classes depending on their contract.
Yes.
And so I just knew, and he was really popular. So I'm like, you have 55 people in each class. You have at least 3 classes. We write every day. You know, we're there 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It's just not possible. You're just not going to see this poem. So I just really wrote like how I write in my diary. And then he said, one day he said, Amira, I'm going to need to see you after class. And I was like, you need to see me?
Yeah.
Why do you need to see me?
Yeah.
And then he was like, so, are you a poet? And I was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Am I a poet? And he's like, I read your poem. And I knew what he was talking about. And I was like, that was not for you to read. You're like, you put it in the journal.
Wow.
I was like, but I didn't think you were going to read it. He's like, I told you all I read these journals. So I was like, I guess.
Yeah.
And then he was like, keep writing, start sharing.
Oh boy, that's beautiful.
Yeah, and when he said that to me, it kind of did something to me. And then I started going to this local little group and sharing. And then I got with this other group and started sharing. And then we actually formed a group, Poetic Magic.
Wow.
We got a
so
CD.
that just came into being. Wow.
Yep. And we were on the radio. We did drive-bys, like where we would go by and just perform, our little crew, and people would give us money. We went into the middle schools, the high schools. We were kind of most of our poems, even if some of them were gritty, they mostly had a positive message.
Right.
You know,
So you said you will have a CD?
Yeah, we had a CD. We had a CD made way back then. That was back in.
Is this CD available for people who would like to?
I have a copy of it, but it's been so long.
Well,
know.
if you want to hear this CD, I'm sure we will put Amira's stuff down in the description so you can reach out to her and hey, we need to hear this CD.
Well,
Yeah.
I have one poem on that CD, and it's the poem I did, Another Pill to Swallow. It's my signature poem. It's a poem I've done around here a lot. But some of the other poets have poems on there, and like back then I was really respecting those other poets, like wow. Because when we did the CD, we practiced and made sure we all memorized our poems.
Yes.
And to this day, that's the only poem I really have memorized like perfectly, because some of the other poems I memorized I forgot because I don't, perform them. And then now I've gotten, since I've been in Ocala, incidentally, that same poem brought me out of my, I would say, hibernation, because I used to be with this group here. It's in Ocala. Why is it escaping me? I can't even think of. It'll come to me in a minute. But we were organizing this conversations about race, and we did it at the college.
Okay.
And so it was, the group is here, been around for a long time here in Ocala, and that's their whole goal. Bridges, the Bridges Project, is to bridge the community, pull the community together. Mm-hmm. And so when I learned about the group, I was so excited, and I started going to some of the meetings. And then during one of the meetings, we were talking about what can we have. We want to have something other than just these conversations, because we did skits and stuff. Right. And I said, well, I'm a poet. And they were like, really? And I was like, yeah, I can do a poem. Oh. And they were like, you can do a poem? And I was like, sure. So I did that poem for them. And they were like, you why didn't you say anything? I was like, well, I can do that. So I did that poem and now that's on YouTube. It was up there for Bridges.
Oh,
so
yeah,
so
folks could find this one on YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's also my TED Talk. The first TED Talk, I did that poem.
You did that
like
poem,
it's my signature poem.
Right.
So I usually try to do that poem anywhere I go, because it's really says a lot about me. Yeah. And a lot of the things I think are important in life. So. And
it's like a foundational poem. You wrote that poem a while ago, and it's like
19 years old.
Yeah.
It's a 19-year-old poem. I wrote that poem, again, as a reaction. Me and my ex-husband were having an argument about taking pills. I didn't used to like to swallow pills. Right. I'm just like, I had a hard time swallowing pills. And I was supposed to be taking these birth control pills. And I was like, you want me to take vitamins, you want me to take birth control. This is like, what is this? Yeah. One is killing life, one is promoting life. Yeah. I was like, this is contradiction. These contradictions, these confusion. So that just triggered me to another pill to swallow.
Right.
And then, I just wrote that poem. So that's how I started kind of here sharing in Ocala, because after I did that event, Patricia was in the audience, who started this MCA, the poetry that we...
Right.
She was there, and she's like, I want to bring you to the Appleton Museum. We're going to do a poetry event. And I was like, okay. And so she was like, I have she had a featured artist who did this Do Not Bleach. She had artwork. And then she also, I think, was a poet. She had a few poems. So she brought me in and her, and then she also did a sign-up list for for open mic. So we had like an entire poetry event at the Appleton Museum, and it was packed. It was packed, and it was a very diverse crowd, and everybody loved it. And so after that, she was like, I'm getting so many calls. I really want to follow up and do more poetry in Ocala, because so many people want this to be a thing.
Yeah.
And so she was organizing it, but she didn't want to take it on because, she had other responsibilities. But she was like, okay, I'll set it up. And so then a few other people got involved, and we all started, kind of just getting together once a month.
Right.
And we actually...
And that's the Ocala Poetry Circle. What is it called?
Spoken Word Ocala. It's kind of the name we settled on.
Okay.
But we were online for a minute during the pandemic. But before, we were actually here at the Corkscrew for a while.
Yeah.
We were out here in the
I
courtyard.
came here when you guys had it at the Corkscrew one time.
Yeah, and we had it down the street there.
Yeah.
We had it several places around here. And
so it goes on every month, I believe. It's the
every
last.
Month. So they might have changed it. Okay, so we originally were all the fourth. I think it's the fourth Tuesdays
Of the month.
But then we changed. Our schedule got shifted, and we were doing the third Tuesdays. But then they're pretty consistent.
Yeah.
Like I said, I've been out of the loop for a couple of months now. But they had it last week, I think, right before I was going to Atlanta.
Okay.
Because I know I was going out of town, but.
So that would put it at the third week of the month. Yeah.
Yep.
So you are stepping into 2023 soon. What's on the agenda for your education side and poetry side?
Well, I have gotten to the end of my doctoral program, and the only thing missing is my dissertation. And I really hope I can finish it in 2023.
Right.
I would like to finish it in 2023. That would be my goal, one of my main goals for 2023. But regardless of whether I finish it or not, the poetry, I've decided, I actually got a book out last year, poetry book, a chat book, and it was published and people brought it. And then I had some issues with the publisher, and it got taken off of Amazon.
Wow.
Then they put it back up, but it's been like a mess. So one of my main goals for 2023 is to redo this book myself, instead of with the publisher that I used, and self-publish through Amazon, and really put some more effort into it, because I had some really good poems in there, but I also didn't put. I'm a creative type, like I draw, and I like to have some images and just make it more me.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna do that in 2023. Do this poetry book and.
So what's the
have
name
that.
of the book?
Deep Dimples. It's called Deep Dimples and Daydreams.
Deep Dimples and Daydream.
Beneath the Smile, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
See, this is how bad I've been. I came up with the title on a whim, because I really felt like it at the time. I was like, this encapsulates everything I've shared in this book, but I didn't really push the book.
Yeah.
But then once I saw people buying it, I was like, oh wow.
Yes.
But like I said, the publisher.
So is it up on Amazon now as we speak?
It's on Amazon, but it doesn't. I don't think you can buy it.
Oh.
It shows the book, and it might be available now, because I didn't even know.
Yeah.
Several people purchased the book, and then one of my friends in Texas wanted to buy another copy, and she was like, Mira, your book is not popping up. And I was like, I don't know anything about that.
Right.
And she was like, no, for real. And then I went and I Googled myself, and it didn't pop up. So I emailed Amazon and they said we're working on it, and then I emailed the publisher and they said we've had some issues.
Okay.
And so they were like, well, we're going to resolve it, basically, for me to wait. But it's all my original work, and it's my work. So I was told that I could redo the book with a new ISBN and have it total control.
Okay.
And so that's what I'm planning to do. I've been reading some of my poems on YouTube, and I really want to start memorizing my poems and get back into how I used to be when I was a little bit more passionate, a little bit more, I don't know, delivering the words with real power.
Yeah.
That's really my goal for 2023, to start to tap back into that side of myself.
Okay.
When I'm teaching, I feel like I transform. I can be quiet and shy, but when I'm teaching, I'm not that way.
Right.
I'm more funny and I'm more on it, and I want to have that same energy when I'm sharing my poetry.
Right. Okay, so how could folks find Amira Sims on social media?
Oh, on social media, my Facebook is Professor Amira Sims.
Professor Amira Sims.
Amira Sims with one M.
Right.
And my YouTube is also, I have two. One is Professor Amira Sims, and then I have another one, They Called Her School.
They called her
school.
Or they called her school.
Right.
Okay, that's interesting.
And they called her school because I have a website, They Called Her School, which I don't really use, but I have it. It's published. I pay for it. And eventually I'm going to start using that website. So I did my second YouTube channel as They Called Her School.
Right.
Because I've been redoing my house, and I do a lot of gardening, a lot of decorating, designing, and I basically do these videos where I show before and after, or before, during, and after. And They Called Her School is where I put all of these videos.
And folks, don't panic. Everything is going to be in the description. All of Amira's social media addresses and stuff where you can find her, it's going to be there. So don't panic, all right? Good.
Yeah, I have... I've been trying to come out of my shell. I spoke at a church in 2022. They invited me to come out and share some poetry.
Good.
And then
Good.
kind of do a little lesson, kind of a combination of the teaching and the poetry.
Right.
And they invited me back for 2023. So I did that. And when I was in Atlanta, they gave me a pretty good welcome.
That's nice.
Like, welcome back.
That's nice.
So I'm going to try to make my way to Atlanta sometime this year, a little more than I did last year. And in Orlando, too. Because when I was in Orlando, I performed, and they highlighted my page on Instagram. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take my teacher's advice and share more.
So for 2023, you want to shake things up with your book, your website.
Yes.
Reading these poems by learning all the script.
Yes.
And memorizing these poems.
Right.
And continuing to teach and build on your spoken word side.
Definitely.
Amira, thank you very much for blessing us with your time to share this wonderful story. I mean, it's amazing.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure sitting here talking to you. The weather is so perfect.
Yeah, we had a few, gigantic engines on these trucks coming up, but hey.
And I'm looking forward to checking out your podcast.
Yes, thank
looking
you.
at the people you interview.
Yeah.
Listening to your music. I'm looking forward.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Again, thank you, Amira.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Pleasure's all mine.